Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Before we dive into today's story, if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update on Springboks news and South African rugby. And if you enjoy this content, please give us a like and share this video with your fellow rugby fans. Your support means everything and helps us bring you the latest analysis and breaking news from the world of South African rugby. Now let's get into today's topic, which has sent shockwaves through the rugby community. Rugby has always prided itself on being a gentleman's game, a sport where physicality meets respect, where warriors on the field shake hands after 80 minutes of brutal combat. But what happens when that line gets crossed? What happens when the integrity of the game itself comes under scrutiny? These are the questions being asked across the rugby world following a controversial incident involving Bulls player and Springbok Hendrik Wessels, who has found himself at the center of a disciplinary storm that has reignited the conversation about conduct, accountability, and the spirit of good sportsmanship in professional rugby. Discipline in rugby is nothing new. It's a cornerstone of the sport, embedded in its very DNA. From the moment young players first step onto a rugby field, they're taught about respect for the referee, respect for opponents, and respect for the game itself. The sport's laws are extensive and detailed, covering everything from dangerous tackles to foul play, from dissent toward officials to unsporting behavior. Unlike many other sports, rugby has maintained a culture where players are expected to accept the referee's decisions without question, where captains are the only ones permitted to address match officials, and where the handshake after the final whistle is sacred. This culture has been carefully cultivated over generations, making rugby unique in the professional sports landscape. The disciplinary structures in modern rugby are comprehensive and multi-layered. World Rugby, along with regional governing bodies like the United Rugby Championship, Six Nations, and various national unions, maintain strict judicial processes to handle misconduct. When incidents occur on the field that match officials miss or need further review, citing commissioners can bring charges against players. These cases are then heard by independent disciplinary panels who review video evidence, hear testimony, and determine appropriate sanctions. The punishments range from warnings and fines to suspensions that can span weeks or even months, depending on the severity of the offense and the player's disciplinary record. What makes rugby's approach to discipline particularly interesting is the categorization of offenses. There are the obvious infractions like high tackles, dangerous play, and stamping, which are clearly defined in the laws of the game. But then there's a broader category that often generates controversy, acts contrary to good sportsmanship or against the spirit of the game. This is where things become more nuanced, more subjective, and often more contentious. These offenses cover behavior that might not be explicitly detailed in the rulebook, but violates the fundamental values of rugby. It's in this gray area that we find ourselves when examining the Hendrik Wessels case. The incident in question occurred during a United Rugby Championship match between the Bulls and Connacht on October 17th. Wessels, a promising talent who has represented the Springboks, was involved in an altercation with Connacht player Josh Murphy. The allegation was serious and shocking that Wessels had inappropriately groped Murphy during the match. What made this case particularly complex was that the match officials, despite reviewing available footage during the game itself, could not find clear evidence of foul play at the time. The on-field refereeing team, with access to multiple camera angles and the TMO system, concluded there was insufficient evidence to take action during the match. Play continued, the game concluded, and initially it seemed the matter was closed. However, the story didn't end there. Following the match, a citing complaint was lodged, triggering the formal disciplinary process. This raised immediate questions and sparked debate across the rugby community. How could something that wasn't clear enough for match officials to act upon during the game, with all their technology and multiple reviews, become the basis for a citing after the fact? The disciplinary hearing proceeded without any new video evidence being presented. The panel reviewed the same footage that had been available to the match officials, yet they reached a dramatically different conclusion. Wessels was found guilty of an act against the spirit of good sportsmanship and handed a 9-week suspension, a ban that would sideline him for a significant portion of the season and potentially impact his Springbok's career trajectory. The reaction was swift and polarized. The Bulls organization immediately announced their intention to appeal the decision, expressing frustration with what they perceived as an inconsistent application of disciplinary standards. Their argument centered on a fundamental principle. If the match officials couldn't find clear evidence during the game, how could a disciplinary panel make such a severe ruling using the same evidence? This question resonated with many in the rugby community who began to question whether the system was functioning as intended or whether it had become vulnerable to inconsistency and subjectivity. But the controversy extends beyond just this single case. It opens up a broader examination of how rugby handles discipline in the modern era. The sport has evolved dramatically over the past 2 decades. What was once an amateur game played for pride and passion has become a professional, highly commercialized global spectacle. With that transformation has come increased scrutiny, advanced technology, social media amplification, and heightened stakes. Players' livelihoods depend on their ability to compete, and suspensions can have significant financial and career implications. Teams invest millions in player recruitment and development, and losing a key player to suspension can derail an entire season. The use of video technology in disciplinary proceedings has been both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it allows officials to review incidents in detail, catch dangerous play that might have been missed in real time, and ensure player safety is prioritized. On the other hand, it has led to situations where frame-by-frame analysis can make split-second decisions appear more deliberate than they were, where camera angles can be misleading, and where the context of fast-paced physical competition can be lost. The human element becomes reduced to pixels on a screen, stripped of the chaos and intensity that defines rugby. For South African rugby specifically, discipline has been a recurring theme. The Springboks have long been known for their physical, confrontational style of play. It's part of their identity, their competitive advantage, and their rugby DNA. But that physicality occasionally crosses lines, leading to suspensions that impact both club and country. The balance between playing hard and playing fair is delicate, and when players from the Springbok system find themselves facing lengthy bans, it raises questions about where that balance lies and whether the current system adequately distinguishes between aggressive rugby and unacceptable conduct. The Wessels case also highlights the challenges of officiating in modern rugby. Referees and their teams are under immense pressure, making split-second decisions in a sport that's faster and more complex than ever before. They have protocols to follow, technology to assist them, and a responsibility to player safety that supersedes all other considerations. When they review footage during a match and determine there's insufficient evidence to act, that's a considered decision made in real time with full awareness of the protocols. For a disciplinary panel to then override that decision using the same evidence creates a troubling precedent. It suggests that the standards applied during matches and in post-match hearings may not be aligned, which undermines confidence in the entire system. Now, let's shift our focus to what this means for Hendrik Wessels personally and what the path forward might look like for a player in this situation. Whether or not the allegations against him are ultimately upheld on appeal, the reality is that his reputation has been impacted, his career has been disrupted, and he faces a crucial decision about how to respond. This is where the concept of accountability and apology becomes relevant in professional rugby. In the court of public opinion, how a player responds to controversy can define their legacy as much as what they do on the field. We've seen numerous examples throughout rugby history of players who faced disciplinary action and had to navigate the aftermath. Some have denied wrongdoing and fought every step of the way. Others have accepted responsibility, shown remorse, and worked to rebuild their reputations. The approach a player takes often depends on the specific circumstances, their legal advice, and their personal values. If Wessels were to issue an apology, what would that look like and what impact might it have? Let's explore this hypothetically, because it's a scenario that could apply to any player facing similar circumstances. A genuine apology in rugby, as in life, requires several key elements. First, it needs to acknowledge the specific incident and take responsibility for one's actions without making excuses or deflecting blame. Second, It should express understanding of how the behavior impacted others, whether that's the opponent involved, teammates who have been affected by the suspension, or the broader rugby community, whose trust may have been damaged. Third, it needs to outline concrete steps for personal growth and ensuring such behavior never happens again. And finally, it should be delivered with sincerity and humility, recognizing that words alone aren't sufficient and that rebuilding trust requires sustained action over time. For a player in Wessels' position, an apology could serve multiple purposes. On a personal level, it could represent genuine remorse and a commitment to upholding rugby's values. Professionally, it could be a strategic step toward rehabilitation, demonstrating maturity and accountability that coaches, administrators, and sponsors value. From a team perspective, it could help heal any divisions or distractions caused by the controversy, allowing the Bulls to move forward and refocus on their campaign. And from a national team standpoint, it could be relevant to his future Springboks prospects, as the national coaches and South African Rugby Union undoubtedly take character and conduct into account when selecting players to represent the country. However, the decision to apologize becomes complicated when there's an appeal pending. Legal and strategic considerations come into play. An apology might be perceived as an admission of guilt, potentially undermining the appeal process. This is the tightrope that players and their advisors must walk when navigating disciplinary proceedings. Do you maintain your innocence and fight the charges, or do you express remorse and seek to move forward, even if you believe the process was flawed? There's no easy answer, and each situation is unique. What would be interesting to observe is how the rugby community would respond to an apology from Wessels. Rugby fans and officials tend to appreciate players who take responsibility for mistakes. The sports culture values honor and accountability, and players who demonstrate these qualities often find forgiveness and support. We've seen it before with players who have committed far more serious offenses, served their suspensions, expressed genuine remorse, and successfully returned to the highest levels of the game with their reputations ultimately intact or even enhanced by how they handled adversity. An apology, if it were to come, would likely need to address multiple audiences. There's Josh Murphy, the Connaught player directly involved in the incident, who deserves direct acknowledgement and respect. There are Wessels' Bulls teammates who have had to deal with the distraction and loss of a squad member during a crucial period of the season. There's the Bulls organization, which has invested in his development and now faces uncertainty about his availability. There are the Springboks coaches and administrators who selected him for national duty and expect players to represent the country with distinction both on and off the field. And there's the broader rugby public, whose perception of him and judgment about his character will influence his career trajectory for years to come. The timing of any apology would also be significant. An immediate response might seem reactive or forced, while waiting too long might suggest a lack of genuine remorse. If the appeal is successful and the ban is overturned, would an apology still be warranted? That would depend on whether Wessels believes his actions, even if not deserving of a 9-week ban under the rules, were still inappropriate and violated the spirit of the game. These are nuanced questions that go to the heart of what it means to be accountable in professional sports. Looking at the bigger picture, the Wessels situation serves as a case study for how modern rugby handles complex disciplinary matters, and how players can navigate controversy when it arises. The sport is at an interesting crossroads, balancing traditional values with modern realities, managing the tension between competitive intensity and appropriate conduct, and trying to maintain consistency in an environment where every incident is captured on multiple cameras and analyzed endlessly on social media. For young players coming through the system, cases like this provide important lessons about the responsibilities that come with professional rugby and the potential consequences when boundaries are crossed. The path forward for Wessels will depend on multiple factors, many beyond his control. The appeal process will run its course, and a decision will be made about whether the original suspension stands or is modified. His performances when he returns to the field will speak volumes about his mental resilience and focus. His conduct off the field and interactions with teammates, opponents, and officials will be watched closely. And his words, whether in the form of an apology or other public statements, will contribute to the narrative that defines this chapter of his career. What's certain is that this incident will be remembered, and how Wessels handles it will be part of his story. Rugby has a long memory, but it's also a sport that believes in redemption and second chances. Players who make mistakes, acknowledge them, learn from them, and demonstrate growth can absolutely rebuild their careers and earn back the respect of the rugby community. The question is whether Wessels will take that path and what form his response will ultimately take. Thank you for watching today's deep dive into this controversial topic. It's a complex situation with no easy answers, and it raises important questions about discipline, accountability, and the values that underpin our sport. What do you think about the Wessels case and how rugby handles discipline? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And remember, if you enjoyed this analysis, please hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and share this video with other rugby fans who want to stay informed about the biggest stories in South African rugby. We'll be following this story closely and bringing you updates as they develop. Until next time, thanks for your support, and we'll see you in the next one.